اللهم صل على سيدنا يا محمد.
My dear respected elders and my brothers in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic that we have been discussing for the past few weeks is the topic of khushu'. Khushu' has many meanings. Khushu', serenity, tranquility, dignity, devotion and humility during one's salah. And we mentioned a beautiful attar regarding Sayyiduna Hatim al-Asam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that he was asked regarding his prayer, how do you perform your salah? And Hatim al-Asam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was asked this because when he worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he worshipped Allah in the best of manners. It was because of this that he was asked. And he said that whenever I intend to perform my salah, I would complete my wudu in the best of ways. Asbagha wudu, the best of wudu. And then I will go to the place where I will be performing my salah, and I sit. He doesn't begin his salah, he sits down for a couple of moments until all his bones, his veins, his muscles, his marrow completely submits to the greatness and the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then once he humbly submits himself to the greatness and the magnificence of Allah, he begins his salah. He begins his salah. ثُمَّ أَقُومُ إِلَى صَلَاتِي, and I make the Kaaba in front of me. I picture the Kaaba in front of me. And what else? وَالصِّرَاطِ تَحْتَ قَدَمِي, and the full sirat beneath my feet. And I imagine Jannah on my right and Jahannam on my left, and Malakul Maut, and the angel of death breathing down my neck. Allahu Akbar Kabir. Look at the state of his frame of mind when he would stand before salah. Allahu Akbar Kabira. And he would sit and he would continue his salah submissively, humbly. And upon finishing his salah, he didn't know whether his salah was accepted or not. Allahu Akbar Kabira. There are many lessons one can derive from the stories of the pious, the stories of the Salihin when it comes to their salah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in our khushu'. Now, again, I'm going to say, what is khushu'? What do we understand by khushu'? I'm going to give you a few pointers today. If not only one pointer that will help you and felicitate you in your worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all throughout the month of Ramadan. There's one thing that many of us do not know, some steps in perfecting one's salah. And one of the beautiful spiritual characteristics that we must have in our hearts when we stand before Allah is the factor of raja, of having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me tell you an event that took place in the time of our noble Prophet Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is recorded in the Sunan of Abu Dawood, that there were two people, one man among the Muhajirin and the other man among the Ansar. Now Sayyiduna, this was during one of the battles. Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam deployed one of the men among the Muhajirin and one of the men among the Ansar to keep guard during that night. It was during the battle, during a certain battle. Now during that night, the Ansar, the man among the Ansar, he stood up in salah during the night. He started to worship Allah Azza wa Jalla Jalaluhu. But the Muhajir, the man among the Muhajirin, he reclined to take a quick nap. And whilst this was happening, a mushrik was passing by where the Muslims were camping. And this mushrik, he saw that the ansar, the muhajir, was taking a nap, and the ansar was engaged in his salah. The mushrik unleashed an arrow, fired an arrow in the direction of the ansari, whilst he was praying. And the arrow pierced his skin and entered his body. But the ansar, he didn't even move an inch. He continued reciting the Quran in his qiyam. Allahu Akbar. Look at the level of concentration, it doesn't stop there. So what happened was, to the amazement of the mushrik, he was bedazzled. He was thinking, how can this man continue? I just fired an arrow at him and he's continuing praying. So the mushrik fired a second arrow and it hit the man even harder. But that didn't move the Ansari. Yet again he continued and persevered with his salah. But from the third arrow the mushrik fired and unleashed upon the Ansari, it was too much for him to bear, the third arrow. And the blood was pouring from his body, seeping away from his body. And that caused the Ansari, the third arrow caused the Ansari to fall into ruku'. And then after going into ruku', he came back up, Sami Allahu liman hamida rabbana wa lakal hamd, and he went Allahu Akbar, and he went into sajda. Upon this, the muhajir, who was reclining upon his bed taking a nap, he awoke and he saw what was happening. And the mushrik fled away. He ran away. So the muhajir went up to the Ansari and he said, Subhanallah, why didn't you wake me up when the first arrow hit you? And the Ansari was there taking out the arrows from his body. And it was hurting. He said, Subhanallah, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what was happening? You could have at least warned me. I would have got up and attacked that person and defended you. The man from the Ansar said, Wallahi. He said, Wallahi, I was reciting one of my favorite surahs, a surah that was so beloved to me that I did not want to cut the surah short. Allahu Akbar. Look at the level of khushu'. Look at the level of khushu' of this great man among the Ansar. Where is our khushu'? When our phones go off in our pockets, we start to shake. I have literally seen people take out their phones in their salah and look at their phones. And they're turning their phones off and they're putting their phones back in their pockets. Allahu Akbar Kabir. We've got so much to learn. Prayer is one of the most beautiful acts of worship, my brothers. When one does his taslim, what is taslim? When we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to our left shoulder, there is a certain sense of serenity. Allahu Akbar. There is a beautiful saying regarding khushu', regarding salah in its entirety. A beautiful saying the Sufi poets have said. They said, Inna fi rawdatin ta'amuna fiha al-khushu' wa sharabuna fiha ad-dumu'. Allahu Akbar, listen to these words. They say that indeed we are in a garden. Here they are saying, they are referring to being in the heavenly court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your salah. Verily we are in a garden. طَعَامُنَا فِيهَا الْخُشُوعِ. That our food in this garden is khushu'. This is our food. This is our rozi. When we are in this garden, when we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our food is khushu', is devotion. Allahu Akbar. Submission is our food. وَشَرَابُنَا فِيهَا الدُّمُوعِ. And our drink is the tears that flow down from our eyes. This is how far they have gone. Now when we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's going to be a short lecture. When we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to come with Allah while we desire and while we hope in Allah. We have to start desiring in Him. We have to start hoping in Him. And our opinion, your opinion must be that insha'Allah, Allah Azza wa Jal He will accept everything that you ask from Him. This is what we call raja. Now raja, this feeling of raja, the more raja you have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more closer you become to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the raja is something of the heart. Raja, having hope, doesn't come from one's mind. Having hope comes from one's heart. And if it is a praiseworthy spiritual characteristic, there are many characteristics out there spiritually, but if it has a positive inclination to do good, to work towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases your darajah. And this is a raja. The feeling of raja, the more higher the feeling, the more higher you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sweetness of the prayer when you come to Him with raja is greater. When you come to Allah with hope that you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept your salah, if done properly, the more sweeter your prayer will be. Let's elaborate. You feel as if you know Allah. Now, someone cannot have hope in Allah unless he knows Allah. If you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will have more hope in Him. Allah has more mercy towards you than your mother has to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says this. Now, all you have to do is always think well of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the hadith al-Qudsi, أَنَا بِظَنِّ عَبْدِي, I am as my servant's opinion is of me. I am the opinion of what my servant thinks of me. So let him think of me as he pleases. This is what Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said. This is recorded in the hadith al-Qudsi. If we contemplate over these meanings before our salah, if we truly understand the meaning of raja, and we truly contemplate upon these words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am as my servant's opinion of me. So let him think as he wishes about me. If we contemplate of these things before our prayer, then something in us, something deep within our innermost cause must be affected. And it must affect the way we think of our salah. We must always think about this. It's very important that the first step for khushu' is to have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people we see today, they don't pray their salah. Yeah? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them and bring them towards what is right. But people have a sense of guilt in their hearts. Shaitan starts to play with their innermost beings, their thoughts. These devilish whisperings that he starts to whisper in their ears that you are not worthy of standing before Allah. You're not worthy of standing before Allah. You've just committed these sins. For a whole year you haven't performed your salah, and now you want to pray. Do you expect Allah to accept you? Allah will punish you. This is what shaitan instigates in the minds of men. But you should understand, and this is proven from the Quran and the Hadith, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not have He doesn't want anything grievous to you. He has no grievance towards odds